Welcome, everybody, to Grow Your Grass Off with Kevin, Brandon, Ian, and Lana. This is where we broadcast food for thought. We have an amazing guest for you today. It's my neighbor, Todd. We're in Costa Rica. It's going to be an amazing interview. Buckle up because you're going to have a lot to take in here. He's a wealth of information and super excited to bring him on the show today. And now it is time for What's Going On. Kevin.
All right. Well, it is winter almost. Weather is fall, but it's winter weather still here in Nashville, Tennessee for the most part. And all the trees don't have leaves and everything's kind of brown and not a lot growing on. And actually, surprisingly, I enjoy it a little bit to have a break. When I was in California for all those years, I never wanted the break. I'm like, stuff stops growing. It's boring now. And to the certain degree it is. And I'm sure by March, I'm going to be begging for, the frost to stop and things to grow again. But I'm kind of enjoying the break. Just, I don't have to worry about lots of things, tick checks and, pruning, weeding. I'm just kind of like, whatever. There's a lot to do, but I'm just not doing it right now because I know I got several months where I can get it done. I do. I mean, my garlic is growing. My cover crop of wheat that I might let grow to grain is growing. I still have my kale and collards that didn't die. I had a lot of frost tolerant stuff like broccoli and not collards, but cabbage die or get significantly damaged. I think I mentioned this last episode, and that still is kind of devastating to me that we had that cold of a snap that early and it was able to do that. My chickens and my duck are good. They're roaming around. Two of them are laying eggs. One chicken stopped laying eggs, and I'm not sure, she's only a year old. And then the other new one hasn't started laying, so we're not getting too many eggs, which is kind of good. You get sick of eggs sometimes, so it's nice to have a little break. So that's the thing. When you want lots of chickens and they're all egg layers, I mean, how many eggs can you eat, really? They're so
efficient. They start passing them off.
Yeah. And they're hard to sell because everybody's got eggs. So it's kind of nice to not have that. We just had an incredible Thanksgiving just the other day, and I really like to use stuff I grew for Thanksgiving, and so I just want to share a little bit about that. We had purple sweet potatoes that we grew in a pie and just roasted. We had South Anna butternut squash that I grew roasted. We had what else do we? Greens for breakfast, because you don't want to just eat Thanksgiving all day because you needed something a little balanced. I had collards, henbit, chickweed smoothies that we grew. And then we still had some of the rooster broth that we made from the roosters that I had to take care of like a month ago. That was frozen. That was in there too. Some herbs from the garden. It's just great to celebrate that kind of harvest. To me, Thanksgiving is, it's about giving thanks, but it's also about harvest, celebrating that. And so it was really nice to just go all out on that this year. That was really fun. So, I got my black soldier fly larva bin in the basement now. And they warmed back up after getting so cold. I thought they died. And so they're still going, which is really cool, even though we've been so cold. I don't know. I guess that's probably pretty much it. There's always something going on, even though it's the downtime.
Awesome.
Well, I have not much going on here in Seattle. It's been raining and raining and raining. I do have a little delivery that's coming now a week early. So Thursday, a couple of days, I will be getting my 2 little chicks. And so I'm super excited about that. That's going on my farm. So those will be inside for 6 weeks or so. Probably will sit right in my office with me as I work. And then they'll go out to the coop to join their little sisters. So I don't have... That's really about it. What do you have, Ian?
Just mirroring what Kevin said. Had a good Thanksgiving. We were so busy preparing and eating that my plans didn't go accordingly. I was trying to get the kids to all seed out our annuals for their winter crops, but I'm doing that today. And then I'm going to be doing budgeting for fencing and hog panel and all that. I'm trying to get my goat fencing and structures up, hopefully here in a couple weeks. So that's the main 2 things. Lots of planning. and plantain. How about you, Brandon?
Oh, that sounds good. Yeah, for me, it's just taking care of the little starts that I have. Got broccoli and a few other things that are just on seed trays right now. And we had a ton of bananas to harvest, so I was stringing those up on my greenhouse. And we had a bunch of bananas to process, so we got a dehydrator. So we'll put them in there for a bit. And the kids love those. And for me, is this week was more about just kind of maintaining. So I haven't been on top of maintenance, and so cleaning out the drainage system. It gets kind of clogged up sometimes with all the torrential rain, down here in Costa Rica. So it kind of backs up, and then just trying to tidy up things. So just kind of some things on the back burner that I've been able to kind of get after. So but that's pretty much it for me. And the neighbor next door is coming tomorrow. I think they got a lot that's about 2 acres or so. And so they had it cleared. And so we could finally see the shape of the terrain, because normally it's just full of jungle. So they can come through. There's just a guy, like 2 guys came and got the machetes. And that's one thing that's really interesting here, is that the machete is just such a necessary thing. You just don't go anywhere without it. If you're walking through the land or whatever, you can, but it's just, people use machetes here so much. And so they just cleared it, and they left the bigger trees and stuff, but it was fun to walk out over the land and kind of see the topography and stuff. So that was fun. But
They
yeah,
clear that all by hand?
they can
They
clear it all by
that all
hand.
by hand?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So there's and we do have guys that come through our property and maintain it with weed whackers, but that's our sort of a next phase, because there's so much brush and stuff that if you did that, you'd be repairing your line the whole time. So it's an interesting progression, because once you get it down and you get it groomed, then you can kind of maintain it, as grass sort of. But getting to that point, it's sort of a couple stages of clearing. And that's what I'd spend a lot of time actually just pulling out branches and burning, having a pile, and then we have a fire and do marshmallows or whatever. And then we do it again, so it's just kind of a consistent process. So, yeah.
Cool.
So, anything else, guys? Is that good for the updates? All right. Yeah. So today's guest we've got on the show, Todd, my neighbor. We want to share what he's doing. And so he's got cottage industries. He's got basically he's got a rental property. He's also subsisting heavily. So 80% of his food he can produce. So he's got it going on here in Costa Rica. And so here's our interview with Todd. All right. So welcome, Todd. Todd's from Costa Rica.
Hi, Todd.
Hi, everyone.
And, so Todd's my neighbor, and actually, funny enough, we're living in the same community. It's an eco village in Costa Rica, and truth be told, Todd's one of the main reasons we're actually living in this neighborhood. So it's an awesome pleasure to have him on the show here with us. And for basically people who may not know, Costa Rica is just an amazing place, but it is harder than maybe what people think sometimes, as far as how you would live, subsist, and all that good stuff. So Todd has an amazing setup here, and it's really a kind of a mini homestead, but it really can pump a lot of food out. So we're really excited. Todd, what can you share with our guests as far as an intro for yourself?
Sure. Well, we moved here. Our family moved here about 8.5 years ago. And we were living in North Carolina before that, and we had a big emphasis on food production in North Carolina. Had these annoying problems of the summer heat and the winter cold that we were dealing with, and heating the house and cooling the house and spending a lot of money to change the temperature all the time and stuff. And so a lot of those things factored into us wanting to move into a more southern zone, more tropical climate, where we could grow food year round, and we would never pay to change the air temperature again. And so that's the case where we live now. We don't have any heating or cooling in our home, and it's just, it's 100% ambient, 24/7, 365 days a year. That was an important component for us. But the biggest thing is the food production. Now, as Brandon mentioned, Costa Rica has tremendous opportunity for year-round food production, especially where we are. We have a real strong rainy season. We tend to have water in the creeks and the rivers year-round. That's an important component. Having said that, it's definitely a steep learning curve moving to the tropics and with food production. A lot of things that you think would translate, such as growing tomatoes or growing, other common things that we were used to growing in North Carolina. It's different here, and there's a learning curve. But that's all good. And once you figure it out, a lot of it has to do with offsetting the heavy rains we get in the rainy season and supplementing the soil with the water soluble minerals and things that are lost during the rainy season. And once you get your head around that, then it's pretty straightforward. But anyway, but we love it here. We live in a community in the southern zone of Costa Rica, up in the mountains at about 750 meters elevation, and we have creeks and rivers running around us, beautiful swimming holes, like world-class swimming holes that you can walk to. It's a special place. It really is. One of the most important things we hear from our guests, we have a rental home next door. We have guests that have come to stay there from all over the world. I think we're up to about almost 30 countries now that have visited our rental home. The one thing we hear is how healing this place is. And I think a lot of it is energetic, that when you come to a place like this and it's so much more natural, and we're surrounded by trees and rivers and water. Our water from the community comes from underground spring right to our homes, and it's living water. We hear from people that come and stay for as short as 3 nights, how much better they feel when they leave. Now we have guests that come and stay for a month or 2, and they have serious health problems that just disappear, that just go away. And so I don't take for granted, not one day when I wake up here, I don't take for granted how healing a place this is.
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing stuff.
When you say rainy season, how long is that? And is it hot? Is it still warm out? Like my rainy season here in Seattle is rain and cold and we're freezing and I hate it. And so I hate that. And so when you say rainy, I'm assuming your climate stays, semi the warm rain, which is acceptable in my eyes.
Yeah.
And how long is that season?
Well, first of all, our year-round temperature here on the mountain is a high temperature are between 80 and 84 degrees Fahrenheit. Our lows at night year-round are between 64 and 68 Fahrenheit. And that's not seasonal. It's just day-to-day variation.
Okay.
But it's within that range. So when the rainy season begins, the rains begin in May, but that's not the teeth of the rainy season. And so it can be fairly dry in end of December, January, February, and March. We start getting a little bit of rain in April, and then we start getting a little more in May, and it increases in June and July. By the time you get to September, usually mid-September, that's what we call the rainy season, the teeth of the rainy season, where we can get 12 inches in 2 hours. It's not unusual.
Oh, wow.
Rain. But it's warm.
Yeah, right.
But
it's acceptable rain.
Yeah. And so one of the challenges when you first move here is drainage and making sure your property is drained properly. Brandon is very familiar with this.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing that's important to invest in initially, is to make sure the water is moving the way it should be during the heaviest of the rainy season. The nice thing is, because we're on a mountain, everything goes downhill. And so it clears quickly. It's remarkable how quickly the streams and the rivers clear after a huge rain, 12 to 14 inches. Within a few hours, the river's clear, because everything's going downhill and everything's going down the mountain. So you just have to direct it on your property to go down the mountain where you want it to, not through your flower bed, not through your garden beds.
Cool.
Oh, that's great stuff. And I'm wondering if you can expand a little bit more on what it's like to live in the community here, and sort of how your setup is. How is your homestead set up for success, or for redundancy, or basically how much food do you produce for yourselves? Those are some things that are really interesting to me.
Sure. We've been cutting our teeth for years as far as the food production component, and we've had great success. We've also had some failures, and our goal has been to learn what wants to grow here that grows well that we can use in the kitchen. And so over the years, we've refined that. We beat our heads against some things for years, and we finally just say, okay, that doesn't want to grow here. Let's move on. But we have a pretty hardcore commitment to food production here on our property. It's been a big thing of ours for years. It's been a focus of ours for years. We don't trust supply chains and systems in the world. We also don't trust any prepared foods out there that are in the world. And so when you put all that together, food production for us is an important part of our existence. And so we grow a variety of root crops that can be used similar to potato. We grow a lot. We have 45 or 50 different types of fruit trees that we have planted. We have citrus year round for vitamin C. We have grapefruits and certain limes that we have are year round production. Other fruits that we have, like oranges and tangerines, tend to be multiple times throughout the year they produce fruit. We have we grow a lot of our own medicines. In addition, one big part of our production is turmeric. We dedicate a big part of our homestead to turmeric production. The turmeric, we process it, dry it, and grind it to powder, and we produce about 20 to 25 kilos a year, or on average, and we get that out to people that need it, and it's gone. We start in December and it's gone by March. Every year there's such an interest in it. It's bad, but this year we pretty much pre-sold everything that we're going to be producing, because turmeric is so healing, and it's just a miracle. And so that's why we have such an emphasis on that. We grow a lot of greens that can be used, like lettuce or spinach, that can be either cooked or uncooked, tropical versions of them. And we grow actual lettuce and actual spinach, but we have a lot of perennials that can be used just like lettuce or spinach. We grow moringa. We grow the other big component of our homestead is tilapia pond, and so we have a tilapia pond at the rental house next door, and it's been incredibly productive for us over the years. And so we don't fish for tilapia that often. We are mostly vegetarians, but we do eat dairy, and our diet is based on what works for us and what we can produce. It's not a big philosophical push or something. We realize that here we can raise chickens for eggs. We can grow tilapia. We can raise tilapia in a pond. And those are great sources of protein. Therefore, that works for us. For us to raise, we've been vegetarians for years, a type of ovo-lacto-pescatarians for years, but even if we weren't, to raise hogs or cattle is that's a whole other thing as far as a homestead, or production. Tilapia, in a fairly small footprint, we can grow a lot of fish, and they're super healthy. They're in pure spring water. In the pond, there's no contamination, whatsoever. And so we have probably 40 or 45 stands of bananas on our property. Bananas are year-round production, but green bananas can be used much like potatoes. And so in addition to the ripe bananas, which are a super sweet, delicious treat, the bananas that we grow here are just they're so much better than anything I ever had in the States. But in addition to, like, during the rainy season, the bananas are slower to ripen. And so that's a lot of times we'll shift to using them as green bananas. And they can be used to make French fries, hash browns, almost anything you would do with potatoes except for baked potatoes. And so when you look overall at the basics of what we grow, we have year-round citrus. We have year-round bananas that can be used as as a potato type product or sweet bananas. We have the tilapia pond, which is year-round available. We have lots of greens that we grow that are perennials that we can, and so if our supply chains were interrupted or anything, I mean, at this point and the other thing I have to point out, it's really important, is my wife, Jill, who I refer to as Wonder Woman. She has the ability to take what we produce on the homestead and convert it into meals that are just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And
I can testify for that too.
And that can't be underestimated, the importance of that, because it's one thing to grow the food. It's another thing to convert it into meals that you don't grow tired of, that are tasty and that you don't grow tired of. And she's brilliant when it comes to that. She's always experimenting with things that we have in abundance that we don't know what to do with. There's a fruit recently called plum that our tree is just filled with fruit, and we didn't know what to do with it. So she's been researching it and spending time on it in the past few weeks. And she made a Thanksgiving plum like spiced apple thing that was just amazing, absolutely amazing. Oh. So that can't be underestimated when you talk about, and that's something I point out to everybody. If you're talking about growing your food, it's also really important to know what you're going to do with it, because otherwise you can get taste fatigue if you're having the same things over and over again. So, but those, I basically walk out each day and do a walk around of our property in the morning, just checking on the status of the fruit trees, looking for any problems, looking for signs of damaging insects, looking, et cetera, et cetera. And when I'm out, I just harvest whatever I see that's ripe or ready. I bring it in and put it on the deck, and Jill comes out later to see what I brought for her, and she plans a meal around that.
Christmas.
Or if she would like a root crop, for Thanksgiving, she wanted yucca as a root crop. And so I go out and pick some yucca, and it's right there in our yard, so it's
right.
It's
how big is your property? How big is your property?
Is about in acres, is about 1 acre in size. It's not that big, but on that acre, we have the ability to produce a surprising amount of food. And so we grow a lot of peppers. We grow a lot of our seasonings and spices. We grow vanilla. We grow basil, thyme, oregano. Oregano grows as a year-round bush here, this tall, and so the things that we aren't able to produce here, or we have not mastered producing here, that we consider critical, such as salt, we stock up. We have ridiculous amounts of things like salt. It's just because we don't trust supply chains. And so the things that are critical that we do have to have from the store, we have them backed up 6 ways to Sunday, and so that we don't have to worry about that. Our coffee comes from a local grower, on the other side of the mountain. He grows spray-free coffee that's just absolutely outrageous. And he delivers to our community. He pulls up on a motorcycle and delivers the coffee bag, everybody's order to it. That's kind of a big picture overview of it. There's so many more subtleties to our homestead and our food production that we've either initiated or we're still working on. We never rest on our, we never say we've got it figured out. We're always we're actually Monday, we're taking a 2-night trip up to a nursery in the northern part of the country because they have a few things that we want, such as comfrey, We wanted, and echinacea. No, not echinacea. Elderberry. And so we're gonna go up there and spend a couple of nights and tour their nursery and all this stuff and get things that we feel like are missing from our from our arsenal here. And we never stop doing that. I never stop starting new avocado trees from seed. I never stop. It's just the more the more the merrier. We have probably 6 varieties of avocado trees, I believe. We're big fans of avocados. So anyway, that's kind of in a nutshell.
How long would you
That's
say
awesome.
it's taken you to establish kind of where you're at? Did it take, I mean, I know you're always adding because we're always all adding, right? But to get where you can just go out and pick what you want for your meals and have her prepare, how, 4 years maybe, would you say, things to start establishing?
Within 4 years, you can accomplish a dramatic amount, especially bananas. Bananas, usually within a year, can start producing. Pineapple, between 12 and 18 months for pineapples to start producing. A lot of the citrus, like lemons and limes, are early producers. There are other fruit trees that are much slower, as much as 10 or 12 years before they start producing. And we're still waiting on a few of those. But overall, I would say when we look back at what we've done over the years, I would say that we kind of hit the sweet spot around 3 years, is what I would estimate is when things really started rolling. Now, a lot of the grains, the perennial grains and stuff, are available right away.
For sure.
But in terms of going out and just getting food and bringing it in and fixing great meals from it and everything, it was around 2.5 to 3 years is when we really felt like we were doing it.
We can do this. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And over the years, we probably produce, and we could produce more, but we probably produce on average 80% of our food right now. We could bump that up if we needed to. There's some things we still like that either my son or one of us likes to get from the store or from our market, more typically from the market, not from the store. But we don't need those. We don't have to have those. If we decided to scale it back, really all we would need to purchase from outside is really salt and coffee. And we know the producers of the coffee. He's a good friend of ours, Francisco. And so it would be salt would be the only thing that we would, and like I say, we'd back that up. But really the things grow so fast here in the tropics. It's absolutely amazing how fast the jungle grows, how fast everything grows. It's like high school football players in Florida is the analogy. It's just like it's unbelievable how fast they develop when you have year-round warm weather and plenty of water and plenty of sun.
Right. True.
Kevin, what do you got? You have a question?
Well, I think he actually answered partially. I was just curious about the things that you do stockpile and need from the store, because I think that's always something like, okay, I'm growing all my own food, but instead, like, you grow most of your own food and you need still something from outside. And I think you sort of answered it with the salt and the coffee.
Yeah.
Typically, I encourage people that that have really small scale, especially in a colder climate like where I'm at, to have like grains stored up and oil as well as salt, because you can produce a lot of the greens and and tubers and starches. And that was really cool. I actually have another question about tilapia. What do you feed them?
Yeah.
Oh,
I wanted to know that too.
Yeah, we currently feed them. That's a good point. A quote unquote commercial feed that's locally available. When you read the ingredient label on it, it's so much better than breakfast cereals in the U.S. I mean, it's a really high quality feed. Now, if that supply of that feed was it's locally produced, but if the supply of that food was interrupted, we would have no problem. There's water hyacinth growing in the pond, and they feed on the roots of the water hyacinth. Also, insects occupy the roots of the water hyacinth, so they pick those off. We have a lot of black soldier fly larvae as part of our production. Because I don't know if Brandon told you, but I have a brewery, and so Jungle Brew Cerveceria, and so we deliver. We supply hotels and restaurants in the southern zone. So we have a lot of these spent grains that come out of the brewery. Those spent grains go out for production of black soldier fly larvae. Those are used to supplement the hens, the chickens, and the tilapia. We also use it as the bait for catching the tilapia. It's the best bait for catching tilapia. And so that's an incredibly rich, fatty product, for the fish. I know plenty of people that don't feed their tilapia anything supplemental at all. And if you do that, they just don't grow as fast, and they don't get as fat, But we have a good friend who has a more closed system than we do. His farm is mind-blowing. He lives on the other side of the mountain. His name is Christian Vargas. And his ability to grow food is legendary. It's unbelievable. Brandon may want to put in links to the video, maybe a link to one of the video tours of Christian's property, because it is just so mind blowing. But Christian has a much more closed system than we do. He grows all the food for his chickens and his tilapia, and largely it's primarily peibaji fruit is what he grows. We never planted peibaji fruit.
Could you say that again? What kind of fruit?
Yeah, it's peibaji, which is called peach palm, is the English name for it. Peibaji fruit it was never our favorite eating it. When we would go to people's houses and they would serve us peibaji, we were like, it was like, so we never prioritized making space for it in our homestead. In retrospect, after visiting Christian's farm, he uses the peibaji fruit for his chickens and his tilapia. And that's pretty much all he needs to give. And so guess what we're looking for next week when we go up to that nursery. So anyway.
I love it.
Oh, that's awesome. That is so amazing. I want to share a story and see, I don't know, maybe you can add to this a little bit. When I grew tilapia in an aquaponic system in my backyard in California, just a tiny little, ICB tote, 200 gallon or whatever. And, tilapia is not known for being an oily fish at all. I mean, it's not what it's drier fish, not oily. And of course they get a bad reputation because of the commercial, the way they feed them sewage sludge and all that terrible stuff. Well, I fed them this super, super high quality organic feed that was, I sourced locally, but, they got stuff from all over the world, to put in there to make the fish healthy. As I was scrutinizing every ingredient. I'm like, oh yeah, this is all good. I would eat this myself. And then I also fed them spirulina, right? The algae, the superfood algae. And when I harvested those fish, I roasted them whole in the oven. That's all. I didn't put anything on them. I just basically killed them and roasted them whole in the oven. Wow. And when I ate them, it was so oily that you could see the oil glistening on your fingers as you're pulling the meat off. And, when you're eating, it's on your lips. It was insane. It was the oiliest fish I'd ever eaten. And it's it's a tilapia. What the heck?
That's supposed to be.
When it's from, did you remove the organs before cooking them?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I did gut them. Yeah.
I wouldn't call ours oily. I'd say they're extremely moist. The fish that wind up in our kitchen are extremely moist and tender. I wouldn't describe it as oily, but
it's interesting, what you feed the animals. That was a clear case of course, I know it's not really cost effective to feed them spirulina necessarily, unless you're producing it yourself or something. But I just thought that was really cool. I'm sure your tilapia tastes 1,000 times better than any you can buy at the market.
Yeah, before we got our tilapia system, really established, and the fish got up to market weight, we would go to local restaurants and get tilapia, and we would buy tilapia from the store, you know, and fix it here. And honestly, what we produce is just, you know, there's also that love, you know, that goes into what you produce and stuff, and everything tastes better that you grow. But honestly, we've had people come by that stay with us and they join us for a meal when we have tilapia, and they're just blown away, you know, at the flavor and the tenderness and just the healthiness of it. You know, it's so we're big fans of our tilapia, and we have tilapia in there that are over a foot long. You know, I think the largest I've caught so far was right at 2 pounds, but there are fish that are bigger than that in the pond. I think some that I've seen, I think will probably get up pushing 2.5, which is pretty big for tilapia.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Is your brewery on site on your property?
Yep, right there.
And do you have
very
people,
small building.
do you sell it? Do you have people come there, or is it just you sell it, outsource it? Or
We
do people
sell
come
it
to your property?
a little of both. Our primary market are hotels and restaurants in the Southern Zone, and I typically deliver beer on Fridays. Like yesterday, I was out driving all around the Southern Zone, restocking everyone and all this. We are a tiny brewery. It's just my wife and I. We don't have any other employees, and we are the only brewer in the Southern Zone that reuses our bottles. And so when we go out on a delivery day to deliver beer, we come back home with a car full of empty bottles, because we charge a deposit and stuff. And so the reason I mention that is because that's a lot of the work, is to wash and sanitize those bottles and get them ready for the next, and inspect them and everything, and get them ready for the next bottling session. We have guests we have people that come by that want to buy beer from us. And we also, the brewery's not open to the public, but we have people that stop by and want to know if they can get beer. That's how I met Christian Vargas years ago, actually. He had our beer somewhere else, and he stopped in to ask if he could buy some, and we've been great friends ever since. You meet a lot of people with a brewery. You meet a lot. It gives you an opportunity to meet and make connections with a lot of people. But it's fun, and it's something I'm passionate about, is good beer, and that's why I started brewing. Because when we moved here, there were really no good beers that I felt like in this zone, and so I started brewing. I was a home brewer in North Carolina, and so I started brewing here. It just took off.
Took off. Do you make any ciders or just beer?
We make a variety of fermented products besides beer. My wife is really into fermentation. My background is a biologist and molecular biologist. Jill's background is a microbiologist and biochemist from our past lives. So Jill is really interested in fermentation and producing food products from fermentation. She one of the biggest mainstays of our diet are fermented vegetables. It's just such an important part of our health, and our food is like medicine. Medicine is like food. That is like our mantra. That's what we live by. And so the fermented vegetables that she makes, fermented hot sauces, fermented beverages, she makes a fermented soda that's made from mandarina, which is one of our favorite fruits here. It's kind of like a cross between a lime and an orange, if you want to think of it that way. And so she uses and she keeps a ginger bug going year round. And so she uses the ginger bug to seed the fermentation, and then adds mandarina juice and naturally sweetens it. And it's absolutely amazing, the flavor of it. I mean, Brandon, his family is big fans of it. But it's like medicine. I mean, to drink that is populating your gut with everything good that you need. Which that brings up the idea of the fermentation, brings up the idea that healing is a very big part of our shtick. We're all about healing. For people that are interested in hearing what we have to say, or interested in hearing our ideas, we're willing to bend over backwards to help people. And we've had so many guests that have come to stay in our rental homes over the years with different types of health problems. And we offer what we call a healing retreat option, which is no charge and no additional charge. And if they want to participate in that, they can come sit with us at our table on our deck, and we just brainstorm with them about what their health problems are, what their concerns are, and stuff. And then afterwards, we make suggestions. And we've had remarkable success over the years. Now, it doesn't hurt that this place is very healing, and so it's kind of it makes it a lot easier. But the most important things we emphasize to people are oil pulling. Is like number one. Getting fermented vegetables in their diet for the wide-ranging benefits of that, from your head to your toes benefits, and grounding or earthing are the three-legged stool that we recommend that everybody that's having any kind of health problems start on. And then it expands from there. Turmeric. We produce bamboo charcoal powder, which is one of the products of our homestead, and it's got amazing health benefits, just absolutely amazing health benefits. And so there are a lot of other add-on things that we can suggest to people, but it is the brewery is fun, and it's the brewery, and it pays the bills and all that stuff. But our passion is healing. That's what we're, if you ask me what makes me tick, it's food be thy medicine, medicine be thy food.
I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome, Todd.
So,
Anything else, guys? You guys have anything else on your mind?
When can we come stay?
Check the calendar at the rental house.
When's the rental open, Todd?
Let's see. It's actually, there's some openings, which is unusual. There are some openings early next year. Usually it's booked at this point for the year. But we've got some opening. Yeah, we've got some openings in March and April. And then beginning of July, it's booked up again for quite a while. So,
when is the best time to visit Costa Rica, would you say?
The
season-wise.
The peak of the tourist season here is around Christmas and New Year's, and that's when you do not want to go, because everything is so crowded. The beaches are so crowded. The plane flights double in cost. The hotel costs go up. Everything is. And so, what I like to tell people is in May and June, when the rates come down and you start getting some rain again, because the rain here is nice when it's not overwhelming. And so in May and June, that's a really nice time. And so for people in the United States whose children are in the public school system, I forget what they call it, standard public school system, that have a summer, in June, July, and August, that's a great time. Because we're just starting to get some rain again, and things are starting to green up again, and all that stuff. And the rivers are starting to flow strong again and stuff. And so that's a really nice time.
All right.
Thank you so much. This is amazing.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm sure we could listen to you talk about this stuff all day.
Well, I'm passionate about it, and Brandon is as well. And so we're, you can't beat having neighbors like Brandon and Ashley, that share your passion for this stuff. And so we can, it's a force multiplier when you get neighbors that are, and we've got a terrific group of neighbors in this community right now that are similar mindsets of health and healthy eating and food production. It was so nice meeting all you guys.
Yes.
Thank you, Todd.
And if you ever would want to come down and visit with Brandon and us, I'm sure Brandon can provide you, information on, options to stay here, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thanks so much, Todd.
You got it. You guys have a terrific day.
Yes, you too. Thank you.
Ciao.
For the next segment, we've got something to chew on, and it is also highlighting cassava, or yucca, as they call it down here. And so yucca is a really fantastic carb root crop that you can grow. It's easy to grow. You just put it in the ground. Usually you just need a segment that's got a couple nodes on it. You can stick it flat on the ground, or you can stick it in the air a little bit. And so it's a funny story. My neighbor, Todd, he just threw some over into the property, not knowing what would happen in the future. And then it turns out that I was able to use those and harvest them. So here's a clip of some things to learn about cassava. This is what the cassava looks like when it's all grown up. You can see that some of them are already flowering. You can kind of see it here and here. I'll show more about harvesting those soon. So one thing to know for this setup here is that underneath this white tarp, clear tarp, is a bunch of sugarcane compost. So apparently it's pretty good stuff. And all of this is downhill from that. So that was unintentional, but it happened. And I'm pleasantly surprised that as you dig in the soil, you can see these worms. There's quite a few good looking worms in here. So to me, that seems like a really good sign. Okay, here I am on the hunt for some cassava or yucca, and I found one. Yeah. So there's more down here. You can kind of see, you know, it kind of broke up a little bit. We'll keep looking, but there's more around here. You can kind of see this one here. I need to try to dig up as much as I can, and then I'll harvest this other stuff pretty soon. But this is a really nice root crop, starchy tapioca. I think is also the other, most people probably know it by tapioca. Real starchy root crop. High calorie, I imagine, as far as having some extra carbs in your diet. And you know, it's not really a grain, so it seems that these root crops are a lot better for this tropical area that I'm in. You got sweet potato, taro, cassava. Those are some big crops down here. So this might be easier for people to visualize and see, but you can see this is the stalk here. And it's like potatoes, you know, it just sort of multiplies and has these tubers that are coming off of it into the ground. So I think we're going to see a lot more cassava around here. All right, so there you have it. I didn't spend very much time digging around. I think that's pretty much all that I harvested. I got probably 30 more plants, 40 more plants that are going to be going in the ground based on just harvesting this amount of root crop. And that's a good amount for a week, you know, at least for a family of 4. I've got 2 little girls, and yeah, I mean, that's a good, to me, worth it to create that much. I watered it a little bit in the summer when it was dry, and yeah, so now I just kept it alive. And we actually had, funny story is, some cows came and got loose, came up the road, and they started munching it all. They munched it all down, pretty much, all the leaves. And I was thinking it was done for. But sure enough, it came back. And we got to harvest.
So today we're going to talk about the importance of grafting trees, or why we need to graft certain varieties of trees. Thought it'd be a good topic for us to cover today. I know Kevin has some knowledge there. A lot of the tropicals I have down here in Florida are grafted because of nematode and water issues. So thought we'd talk about that today. I'll let Kevin take it away.
All All right. That's a question I get a lot with my clients over the years. And, you know, you go on YouTube or whatnot, and you see a lot of philosophical debates about it. You know, a lot of people are like, no, grafting is bad because you want the tree to grow from seed. There's just advantages to both depending on the tree. So what grafting is, a lot of people don't understand, and I'm not used to maybe defining it. So, you know, pardon my clumsy definition, but a graft is you take a cutting of an existing plant and you surgically graft that onto a like plant. So you're not grafting apples on oranges, you're grafting apples to apples. There's a few occasions where you know, different species are compatible, but typically it's apples to apples, pears to pears. And wherever that graft is made, from that point on, where you grafted that branch or that what they call scion, that will be the genetics of the original cutting, right? So they're not mixing genetics. So a lot of people think that, you know, oh, the rootstock, and which is what you're grafting onto, and then the scion, which is the cutting that you're grafting, you know, onto the rootstock. They don't mix genetics. So it's whatever that graft is from that point on, it's whatever. So if you have a Granny Smith apple scion that you graft onto whatever rootstock, some other kind of apple, from that point on, it's Granny Smith. Does that make sense? So that's how you get genetics. So if you wanted to plant an apple from seed, you know, let's say you plant 1,000 apples from, you know, this one apple tree, you're going to get maybe 1,000 different types of apples. You know, apples vary a lot in their genetics when you grow them from seed. So some of those may be good. Some of them may not be good. Some of them may take 10 or 15 years to fruit. Some may never fruit. Some may be little crab apple kind of things you don't like. You may also get the most delicious apple you've ever had, and you can name it yourself. So that being said, in order to, you know, to get the kind of apple or pear, whatever you want, the variety that you want, that has been, you know, selected over time or, you know, bred to have certain characteristics, you have to graft. There's no other way to do it. And so that's why, you know, 99% really of commercial fruit trees are grafted, and that, you know, apples, pears, and all the stone fruits, so they're all grafted, you know, most things are. And so that's the advantages to doing that. I mean, one of the disadvantages to grafting is that you're not then creating new types that are adapted to your area, are resilient, have new flavors and whatnot. You know, that's the only, the way we got the graft in the first place, you know, what you want to replicate is through allowing seedlings to grow. So if nobody's growing seedlings, then you're stagnant. You're never going to create new genetics, new varieties, or anything like that. And then diseases can, you know, come in with certain varieties and wipe them out that maybe other ones would be resistant to that you're growing from seed. Another reason that grafts aren't necessarily as good is that some people argue that the plant doesn't have the same resilience. And I'm sure most growers that have ever had a wild apple or plum or peach or whatever come up from just, you know, something that was thrown in the compost or whatnot have witnessed this. Sometimes they just do better. They're just more vigorous. They're healthier. They may not produce the best fruit or not produce fruit at all, but the plants are more healthy a lot of times from seed. And then when you look at things like pawpaws, for instance, they have a very deep taproot. And you really want to have like a seedling growing in the ground. They don't transplant as well because that root goes so deep and they don't like being disturbed. But that being said, you have a seedling growing in the ground, you can graft a name selected cultivar, a pawpaw on it. Even, you know, you can graft it on the plant that's actually in the ground. So that's an advantage there. So you're not just getting whatever pawpaw, you're getting, you know, Wells or mango or sunflower, these name varieties that are proven to be so delicious and good. So, you know, I think grafting is amazing. Some plants are very difficult to graft. Apples are very easy, for instance, and citrus is kind of in between. A plant like a feijoa, also known as a pineapple guava, is extremely difficult to graft, to have them take. So, and then the other thing cool about grafting is you can graft multiple varieties on one tree. So you can have an early, mid, and late, you know, fruiting apples on the same trees, but especially good in a small space. Or you can do that for breeding purposes. I actually recommend, we should maybe try to get him on the show. His YouTube channel is Skill Cult, and he's in Northern California, and he does really cool natural apple breeding. and provide scion wood and seeds and everything like that. And it's got some really good grafting videos. So that's something to talk about. This is a huge topic and subject, and I can go on and on about it. But anybody have any direction for me to take it to keep it short?
I would just say that if you grow stuff from seeds, it's not a wasted effort. It might not be the best for your climate, but you can always graft those name brand scions on. There's a lot of people down here that grow avocados they shouldn't from seed, so still make it happen. And then just, do you have any grafted trees? I know I have a bunch of, especially cocktail trees. I don't know if you have any, anybody else has any, but I have several Jupiter that have 2 to 3 varieties on one tree. So
Cool.
And then particularly for those, they use one rootstock called a Sabra variety, and that's just has more tolerance to the soil. Have really, really more again, tolerance, or there's a pH issue with a lot of the rare varieties for that type of tree. So that Sabra variety can handle a little bit wider pH range, which is important for a lot of subtropicals and tropicals.
Yeah, that's a really important point that I failed to mention about the advantages of grafting, is that you can select a rootstock that is more resilient for your soil conditions and your local conditions. And, they have lots of named rootstocks for apples and stone fruits and things like that are very specific. And it sounds like this is the case with the jaboticaba. A lot other trees, often the rootstock is simply a seedling. So you can do that, like you said, you grow avocado trees, you can graft a name variety on it, because avocados typically don't breed true at all. So the chances that your avocado seedling is going to produce something good are not that great. But then that's how you get new varieties too. So most of my trees are grafted, but I do start a lot of seedlings as well. So I do a little bit of both. And certain trees do better from seed. From the others, they like you take a pawpaw from a really good pawpaw. Chances are that tree is going to produce a really good pawpaw versus, an apple, which could be, it's a crapshoot really what you're going to get. But look into the Still Cult. He does it. It's so cool what he does there. Yeah.
I was going to say, I think that's a really good point to bring up, is that some plants are true to seed and some aren't, right? So, you can get away with it maybe with certain varieties of plants, but then other ones, like you said, apples is a great example, because you could plant different seeds from an apple tree, and you're going to get a wide variety of different outcomes, as far as what type of apple that's going to grow. And here where I am, avocado is probably really similar, right, in terms of the genetics. So, you can plant, and that's actually what's happened in my compost, is that I've got, 18 trees coming up that are avocado just from my compost. And so I'm going to, what am I going to do with these trees? I can still allow them to go on, right? And so we can see what happens, and there's no harm done. But it is interesting to compare those to ones that I actually got, I purchased and then planted, because, they were bigger trees, but it seems that the ones that started out on their own are going to bypass them pretty fast, pretty quickly. So it'll be fun to see kind of what happens there. And another thing I wanted to bring up was Mark Shepard, because I've read his book, Restoration Agriculture, and I thought, well, the way he presented it was super amazing to me, because there's a simplicity to it, and he's got a wealth of information up in, I think he's in Wisconsin, right? But he basically has this method called STUN, sheer total utter neglect. So the idea is that he'll plant all kinds of varieties and just see what happens. If it doesn't make it, it's okay. It doesn't make it, and if it doesn't taste good, that's okay. We don't have to worry about it. But he plants enough, I guess, that he's able to kind of find, the genetics that are going to work, and he's happy, to kind of cull the ones that don't. And if they, get disease and whatever, I suppose I kind of gravitate toward that, is just keep planting and see what happens. But I do think that there's so much value in knowing that skill of grafting, and sort of, because at the end of the day, not everybody has a big tract of land, I guess, to sort of experiment on.
Right, exactly. I think for most growers in most sort of, suburban small scale situations, you should almost go all grafted trees, because, someone somewhere else was able to do that work like Mark Shepard's doing, that has more land, or just, crazy into it, like somebody like me. And so that way, because you don't want to wait 5-10 years, take up half your yard with a tree and then find out that it's a dud. It's just not cost and time effective for most people in most situations. That being said, more amateurs need to be growing trees from seed to get more resilient varieties and increase that genetic diversity, rather than just allowing, the universities and the big ag to do that, which is mostly what's going on. One thing that's, it's interesting is with all the tropical fruits, because I know this show today has got a big tropical theme. There's very little work done on most of those tropical trees. There's so many different types, and they haven't been, domesticated, and there's not as much work done on them as like stone fruits or apples, for instance. And so there's a huge potential there for finding, things that can take different soil conditions. Wet conditions, dry conditions, more cold tolerance, move those things further up north or, south, just away from the equator. And there's all sorts of opportunities there, for selecting better varieties just through amateur means. So that's, it's exciting. And I, sometimes wish I lived in the tropics too.
Me too.
And one thing too, for people who already have a property, maybe they've got some natives already there, right? So I think it's an opportunity, if you were to know your property well, and maybe have somebody come who can show you, and say, okay, that's a wild plum, or that's a wild, whatever, and say, okay, well, you can actually graft onto this crab apple, and it's already established. So I think that's a piece that maybe some people overlook,
Yeah, absolutely. They're up on Orcas Island, the Permies there, the brothers, I can't think of their name.
The Bullock brothers, yeah?
Yeah, the Bullock brothers, yeah. There's like a wild apple up there, Malus fusca, I think, and they were grafting, apple varieties onto it, which is really cool. And I guess sometimes, there's the pull between what grows like with sheer total utter neglect, and versus what grows more efficiently. So, let's say the wild pawpaws you find here, they're delicious, but they're mostly seed and they're smaller. So if some of these, selected cultivars are much larger with hardly any seeds in there, so there's a lot more, food, and some of them are even that much more flavorful than the wild ones. But if that tree needs, more sun, and you have a shady area where it needs, more fertilizer or particular soil or whatnot, a little more pampering, that may, the trade-off is, I don't need that much better fruit if I have to spend more, energy growing it, where I just let them all grow in wild out in the forest and I don't have to do anything. Again, that works a lot better when you have more space and more land. I think the idea is like, whatever grows is great, and we'll just eat whatever grows, the kind of the foraging mentality. And I'm sure we'll talk about that on the show a lot, which I'm all about, but it does require more space. And that's just, there's a balance between those things that needs to be struck.
Anything else?
I was just going to say that I'm kind of experimenting now with dragon fruit. We have 7 types here, and 3 of them are rock stars. The other ones are not. So I need to do some experimentation, whether I'm putting those not so thriving varieties on the rootstocks of the other ones and seeing if that works, or they just don't do well in the humid environment. Particularly, it's the yellow varieties, spineless or spined varieties from South America and Middle East, Africa. So anyway, it's a side note. But
that's cool.
Current experimentation.
Yeah, I want to hear more about that work that you're doing. One thing that's really fascinating that I learned a couple of years ago is that you can graft any cactus onto any other type of cactus, regardless of species or type. And that just shows you how incredible cacti are, that there are these weird plants that are just unlike any other plant. It's bizarre. And some of them won't work just through the sheer mechanics, like they just don't fit well, but theoretically all cactus can be grafted onto other cactus. So I learned. Blew my mind.
So it works.
No.
Mind blowing.
That's a rabbit hole I'm going to be going down next year then.
All right. Well, I think we had an awesome show today. I can't wait till the next one. Until then, be sure to grow your grass off.
Yes.
Woo!